We've all done it. It's late, you've been out with your friends, you're stuck in town, it's time to call a taxi to get you home. But what happens if you have to find something that's not only going to fit all of your friends in it, which is a few more than just a car, but is also sustainable and isn't going to cause any upset within the town in which you live? Well, how about this? This is a concept vehicle from Mercedes. It is the EQV. That is their first fully electric passenger transport vehicle. What certainly looks interesting, let's take a closer look and find out a little bit more. Here at Autogefühl, I like to specialize in finding people to speak to from manufacturers who are clearly better looking and, most importantly, taller than me. So, if you would introduce yourself for our viewers.
I'm certainly taller than you, but that's it so far. My name is Benjamin, and I'm responsible for the electrification of our vans. So, for instance, for this concept EQV here.
Well, that represents quite an exciting idea for me, because I think we all acknowledge now, finally, that we have to be looking more and more towards electric platforms. And it's exciting for me to see Mercedes-Benz pushing that concept forwards. The People Mover is an obvious next step to take, but I'm intrigued to find out a little bit more. Can you please explain to me, what is the thinking behind this vehicle?
So our conventional V-Class is already very successful as of today. And so we thought it's the logical next step to also bring this to our EQ family. So as you can see, it is a true EQ and EQV on the outside, the inside, and also under the hood.
Okay, well, that all sounds good, but what's the effective range, realistically?
Well, we are certifying this concept car with 400 kilometers, and then, as you know, it really depends on, are you driving it in winter, in summer, up the hill, down the hill, 160 kph, 60 kph, so it really depends on what you're doing. But I think if you can get more than 250 kilometers of real range, I think then we're talking about an actual use case where most customers would be satisfied, and I think that's achievable. The battery is 100 kilowatt hours, and if you look at other cars also, you know that 100 kilowatt hours is a decent size for a battery electric vehicle.
Now, what I really like about this idea is that I think concept cars are a place for manufacturers to dream. I mean, realistically, a lot of those ideas never see the light of day. But what's particularly interesting to me about this concept is that we have now Mercedes-Benz electric commercial vehicles on which are feeding through these ideas for which we can have passenger vehicles. So realistically, how long would you think it would take before something like this could come to market and be viable?
Well, that's something that we kind of said already today. We are going to show the series version of this vehicle already at the International Auto Show in Frankfurt in September this year. So you can assume that if we show the series version in September, it will not take much longer before it will actually hit the road.
And the series version also has a 400-kilometer range?
Well, that's at least what we're thinking about today. Maybe it will be more, but 100 kilowatt hours for us seems to be a decent size for the size of vehicle.
So realistically, if we're being really, really pragmatic and direct, you're telling me that we're going to have a series version of this that will deliver at least 200 kilometers. Is that correct?
That's my personal goal. That's what I'm standing here for. It's my daily job to make sure that we can get that out of the vehicle, because we are already working on the actual development of this series version here.
To me, that's an absolutely astonishingly exciting concept, because if you consider the amount of polluting vehicles that we could take off the road, if we have more and more electric vehicles that deliver realistic and, I have to say, cost-effective solutions for companies, it's really very exciting. Now, talking of cost, I know we don't have any ideas of numbers, but in an ideal world, do you have even a ballpark as to what you would like to see this coming to market at?
Well, ideally, if you calculate and take into account all the incentives that some states and governments already give, I think the goal should be that over a lifetime or over a period of 3 years, for instance, it should be the same like a conventional vehicle. So that would be the ideal world. Then there is no disadvantage from a buyer's point of view, switching to electric mobility.
Well, we heard an awful lot about that with the commercial vehicles, and it's exciting for me to now hear about this coming through to the passenger. I wonder if you can point out some of the features of this. I know it's a concept car, but it's still really exciting to see some of the thinking.
Okay, so let's maybe start with the front of the vehicle. So as you can see, it looks already like an EQ. So it's got the design features of our EQ family. For instance, this light band that goes through from the left side to the right side. We've got this black EQ mask, as we call it, and I think the very nice looking grille that goes with it. So it's got the features of the EQ, it looks like an EQ, and also under the hood it's got the components of the EQC as well. So we are sharing some of the technology with our passenger car colleagues, and we can deliver 150 kilowatts of output power, roughly 200 horsepower, which I think is also decent for the size of vehicle and also for the use case.
Are there any special features about the interior in terms of how it's delivered or how the driver's experience may be different from a standard internal combustion?
Yes, let's take a look, if you may.
Thank you. Okay, so you're going to talk me through what I'm looking at here. And from the get-go, this dashboard looks extremely familiar and comfortable to me.
Yes, which is also a good thing, right? Because we want the customer to feel comfortable and familiar in the car. Maybe let's start with some of the design elements. So you see here the trim and color is very comparable to what we show in the EQC, in the series production version. So
can you, sorry, just to ask, can you tell me what this material is?
We call it cloud material. So it is a blue material that comes together with this rose gold stitching, which we associate with electromobility because it's copper colored. And you can also see those design elements also here for the air valves, and also in the middle the dashboard, all the buttons have the rose gold. Those are some of the design elements, but also when it comes to the user interaction, we are using the MBUX system, so the "Hey Mercedes," you can talk to the car responds, and you can turn on the seat heating or whatever. But it's also embedded in the EQ ecosystem, so you can use all the connectivity features. You can pay your electrical charge over the system, or you can start the preconditioning of the vehicle while you're at home, you know, in your chair, starting the app. All these things we are also bringing to life in this car.
Has there been any additional attempt been made to bring sustainability to the design and the finish of this platform in particular?
Well, of course, when it comes to energy consumption, because the more energy or the less energy you consume, the more ecological friendly you are. So, for instance, we're using in order to heat the vehicle, we're using a heat pump, which some of you may have heard from housing, you know, from your own house. It's a very energy efficient way to heat up the car, but also to heat up the house. And it's one of the things that we do in order to reduce the energy consumption, especially in the winter time, and therefore also being more ecological friendly.
So in terms of practical application, I'm sitting in my house, it's late at night, I know I want to use my vehicle tomorrow morning, so I'm going to be able to use my Mercedes app on my phone to tell the car what time I want to use it,
yes,
which is going to make sure the car is warm and ready for me to use. And then it will also tell me what the charge state of the vehicle is. And I sit into the car, and should there be any difference for me in the way that I experience this car to the way that I would experience its standard internal combustion engine equivalent?
Well, if your standard combustion engine car also had some kind of preheating system, the level of comfort would be comparable. So the big advantage is that, for instance, if your car is parked outside, the windshield would already be defrosted, and also in the interior of the car it would be nice and warm, so you wouldn't have to spend a lot of energy at the beginning of the drive to heat up the car, to defrost the windshield, but instead it would already be done for you. with electricity from the charging station.
Okay, well that's a great idea, but I have to tell you, one of my wife's greatest pleasures in life is looking through the window at me scraping the ice off my car at 4 o'clock in the morning before I have to drive to the airport. So, you know, you're kind of taking something away from her there. So
sorry about that, but you could still ask her to turn it off, the feature, right? So that that she still gets the pleasure.
Oh, and she would. She would. So, from a driving point of view, how does this perform versus a standard car? What's the acceleration like?
We're not communicating the acceleration values yet, but as you know, the electric drivetrain feels very smooth. You don't get any jerks or bumps. You get the full torque right from the beginning. So it's a very, very comfortable ride and drive, I would say. And also with the battery, at a low point, you have a low center of gravity. So therefore the car overall feels very stable and almost sporty and nimble.
So what's required in order for this to be a realistic market proposition? Is there a missing piece in the jigsaw in terms of what you feel needs to happen before this becomes a mainstream product?
I think from a vehicle point of view, we're ready to go, and we're preparing everything to be ready just shortly after the IAA, like I said. But I think what is also important is that the charging infrastructure will grow with the car companies at the same speed, so that our customers can charge when they go long distances or inner city parking, for instance. I think we need to see a lot of investments there as well to support also the movement.
I think that's absolutely key. Now, I'm quite keen to get in the back.
Yes.
And for you to show me around in there. Now, this doesn't look radically different from what's gone before. Are there any special features back here? Actually, you know what? Come and sit back here with me.
Sure.
Let's sit in the car. Are there any special features that really lets me know that this is different, that this is new?
No, and that was exactly the goal. We didn't change anything. So the foot clearance, the leg room, the clearance up here, everything is the same. So you can take the seats out, you can turn them around, you can put 8 seats in there, or 6 or 7, whatever, or you can take them all out and just put a bunch of bicycles in here or luggage or whatever. So it remains fully flexible and keeps all the functionality that the V-Class as a conventional vehicle also has.
So that must have a higher ride height then to accommodate for the extra batteries, surely?
Well, the battery just fits under the body in white. So in this particular car, we can keep the ground clearance, and at the same time, we also keep the height of the trunk. So there is no change when it comes to ground clearance or, the way you enter the car.
Wow, that sounds quite impressive. But let me be realistic for a moment. I would imagine that a common criticism that people would have of this is saying, yeah, but you know what? I know what I'm doing with the petrol or diesel model. I can get that worked on effectively. This looks really complicated to me. Like, what are Mercedes doing to make sure that the maintenance and upkeep of this vehicle is not unachievable for normal people?
Well, that's the beauty of being part of the EQ family, because the whole company is now moving towards electrification. We benefit from all the dealerships, upgrading their systems, upgrading their tools. Everybody has the right information to work on these vehicles. And also, in principle, a battery electric vehicle has less moving parts, less things that can actually break. So our expectation is that over time, we will see much less cost when it comes to after sales and repair work.
So it should. I think the whole ecosystem should be a whole lot more predictable in terms of, 1, what your upfront costs are, 2, what your maintenance and ongoing costs are, and 3, what your resale value realistically should be. So it should benefit the customer.
Yes.
Yes, it might look like a big front-end payment, but in actual fact, when you work through the life cycle of the vehicle, it's much more manageable than a standard car, in effect. Is that fair?
I think that's a fair point, and maybe a private customer wouldn't do the math the way you just did it, but I think a commercial customer would. So maybe a taxi driver or somebody who owns a smaller fleet of maybe 5 or 6 vehicles that pick up people from the airport and drive them to an exposition or something like that. I think a person like that can calculate the annual mileage and the amount of tax money saved and the energy costs saved and stuff like that. And maybe over a period of 3 years, it will even out. And maybe the private customer will look at other benefits and say, still, even though it's a little bit more expensive, I want to be ecologically friendly, I want to have a quiet drive, I want to have a smooth ride. And they might also choose to go fully electric.
And it's not a crazy suggestion when you consider, what is the date for Paris? 2030, 2025?
2030, yes.
2030, Paris say no more vehicles unless they're fully electric. So this is, you know, whether we like it or not, this is the future. So I think it's really great to see how that practically is working and how it's thought through. If you had one thing that you could communicate to people who are passionately not enthusiastic about their electric future, what would you say? What would you want them to know?
I'd say this is really a multi-person vehicle without any compromise. So you can do whatever you want. You can do the same things you're doing with your petrol or diesel car, just quieter, smoother, more elegantly.
Quieter, smoother, more elegantly? Again, I'm not completely convinced my wife is looking for that. But I really am convinced by the sustainable element of this vehicle. Thank you so much for taking the time to show us around. And I really am excited, and I very much hope that this will come into standard production.
All right. Thank you very much.
We were talking a lot about where to film the conclusion for this piece, and I couldn't think of a better spot than this view here. Now, the engineers actually said to us, "Are you sure you want to show this? It's not the most beautiful engine you've ever seen." But to me, that's one of the reasons that it's so important. What I like so much about this vehicle and so much about vehicles of this type are that they really present to us a future in which we can produce a solution that allows us to keep having the big cylinder beasts that we love to drive so much, but at the same time producing cities that work and environments that work. You know, the large majority of trips we ever take are really very short and are perfectly suited to an electric engine. Nobody wants to race around country roads in this car. But think about how great you would feel going to pick up kids from a soccer match in the middle of town in this. Zero pollution, zero effort, zero energy used. Perfect. It can be supplied by wind or solar power when you have that at home or at work charging. It doesn't have to have any negative environmental consequence. And not only that, but the sound that it's going to make is going to be so much less. If I sound a little bit too much like an advert, I apologize for that. But I'm a huge fan of an electric future for mass mobility. Now, when it comes to personal mobility, that's a little bit different. But that's another story. If you have any comments or questions, please pop them below. Please subscribe, and we hope we'll see you all again very soon.